Check 1 2. Hopefully that wasn't blowing out people's ears there. What's going on, Heidi? You can go ahead and unmute yourself on Zoom and we can get this ball rolling. What's going on, everybody? The Storyteller series, Taika Waititi, how he tells a story, how he does story. My brother geniusly brought up to me that that's not proper English. I'm like, I'm well aware. I'm like, look at any billboard. They are not either. It is essentially a tagline. So Heidi, Costume Co., happy to have you here. This is your episode. You requested Taika, which I will just interchangeably pronounce that differently to appease everybody, to piss off everybody, and then appease everybody as well. Please let me know in the comments below. I'm trying to get the first episode here with good audio. If anything sounds off, Heidi, you'll always be hearing me through the good audio, which is how the folly comes into play, because the guests can always hear through my actual mic, but last time I was through the webcam. But anyways, this is your pick. I'm so thrilled about it because I find him to be so dynamic, and admittedly, the first two films I have not seen. We are going to be mostly focusing on What We Do in the Shadows, Thor Ragnarok, as well as Jojo Rabbit, which I viewed last night for the second time, and I'm all about that. So introduce yourself, tell everybody what you're all about, and one last note on that, the perfect person to have an understanding about how somebody tells story in the visual medium of film especially is Heidi, since she is a professional costume designer, and she knows every little detail counts. So take it away.
Oh, thanks so much, Justin. I'm so happy to be here. But by the way, like your graphics, I'm like, whoa, you're just like blowing me away. I've got like 2 monitors here, so I'm keeping an eye on what's going on the other side. So your introduction, your graphics, your thumbnails, totally, taking things up a notch.
Misspelled his name in the thumbnail. Perfect art. All this time in 3 different programs. And then I noticed today, I'm like, that is missing an A.
And I was going to say, like, about Taika, it's kind of like, I always say Sansa, but then I've heard, people say Sansa, and then I've heard people say it multiple ways. So I don't know.
In Sandra. Don't forget.
Sandra.
Don't forget about the little bear. Thank you, Johnny. I turned the mic up a little bit. Is this better? And we should be good. So
yours is low. Mine, I'm just loud.
No, it's again, it's inside baseball. It's nothing to do with you though.
But I was just gonna say, I'm Heidi from Costume Co. If you guys don't know who I am, and hopefully I've been on Justin's channel a few times, and I'm always like thrilled to be here. It's so much fun, or when you come on my show as well, Justin. So always happy to be here. And you can find me I'm on Twitter, or Costume Co. is my YouTube channel. That's where you can find me. And I love it when I meet new people coming by and saying hello.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic work. A professional on a platform that is lacking in them. So always an honor to have you. And you actually provided me with something I've got up right now, the filmography that you had from some of your very detailed and very entertaining as well as informative videos. So links are in the information for her and all my mods. If you're out there, I love you. And if you could drop those links as well, it really helps. So we'll start at the beginning. Eagle vs. Shark. If anybody is a Flight of the Conchords fan, which I was this is one of the, I always talk about my DJ years when I kind of like lost track of like, it was a hell of a time, but life in general just went, woo, like a little bit crazy. And I had done the acting school and all that, writing before that, and then kind of lost track of it for a while. But Flight of the Conchords was one of like the mainstays for me during that time. Still, like, it was one of those things I still was like, that got those creative juices flowing, for lack of better words. So
yeah, it's fantastic. And Jerome is Jerome with, I can't remember his last name though, who's in it.
Yeah, you got Jermaine Clement.
Yeah.
And then
Jermaine Clement. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I'm losing it.
They're kind of like a comedy duo, and then they have guests also on their, they'll have regular guests. So that's where I think what we do in the shadows kind of came about, because Taika is friends with them because they're all down under.
Yeah.
Before we get started with this, I just want to say there's something about the Aussies and the New Zealanders. I know they don't like to be compared to each other. There's something, they have maybe because they're isolated from the rest of the world, they have a particular style.
Yeah.
Do you not think
that oceanic? Yeah, it's a vibe. It's like I would say it's a wackier British vibe. It's like a little bit more energetic, dry humor, Monty Python-esque, but
very Monty Python-esque,
with more energy. That one's better than other, but I totally get what you're getting at there. So not to be redundant.
And I think Taika, if anybody doesn't know this about him, he's mixed. So he's half Maori and he's half Jewish. So that really kind of informs his work a lot of the ways, and his quirkiness. Like, for instance, just, in Jojo Rabbit, we can get to that after, just the fact that he would have decided to play Hitler. Yeah. But with contacts, they put contact lenses in him.
In a fat suit. I was one.
And a fat suit.
We'll get to it. I thought my weird brain went there and was seeing where he's dancing next to JoJo. I was like, hey, that guy looks like he's usually in pretty damn good shape. I wonder if if that's just movie. I'm just, trying to size him up. But yeah, like, going back to the whole Kiwi, beginnings and staying with, a certain group of creators. I know he was in a comedy troupe with Jermaine, not Brett from Flight of the Conchords. He directed and wrote two of their episodes. I know that. Very, very funny. This is not Taika's work per se. There's 2 episodes of it, but Eagle vs. Shark is very much so of the same vibe and the same, essence that is in Flight of the Conchords. And it is another story that has a immature adult and a very beyond their years child, as we'll see as a trend with his stories. He does parody, does satire, he does it very well, and he has these slight little nuances to his style that I feel is a very effective way to convey very, very important messages, but also just be entertaining as all hell. So we'll just skim kind of by Eagle vs. Shark. It is a story about a writing teacher that's kind of stealing the story of one of the students, and a schoolyard bully that grows up but never truly grows up against a formidable foe much younger in years. Boy, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, now I don't know. I didn't look that up to see. Is that an original screenplay, or did he base that on an actual novel? Because sometimes he does that. Like, for instance, with JoJo, it's based on a novel. So
I'm almost positive he wrote Eagle vs. Shark. Yes, he wrote Eagle vs. Shark. And he acted in it as well, which is an ongoing. Then he goes to Boy, which is also written, directed, and acted. He's accented as well. So he's a triple threat. We'll talk about that.
He is. Yeah, he is definitely a triple threat. I don't know if he can sing or dance though.
Yeah, it's the new triple threat. Hugh Jackman's the last of that crowd.
He is, yes.
An Aussie. What we do in the shadows. So the first thing I want to touch on is like what you were just talking about, Heidi. What I find fascinating about him, a lot of times what I'll do before any video or live stream is my research, maybe to a fault, mostly, is me watching interviews or listening to interviews with these people. Like, for instance, when I did something on Tolkien, I read all of his letters to C.S. Lewis. You know what I mean? Like that, instead of rereading one of his books, I was reading his correspondence to like kind of get like inside their head and see, where the creative juices come from. And he has a visual arts background. I don't know exactly what his degree was, but he was a painter. He's a very artistic person. We see claymation in some of his projects and so forth. He's done a number of fashion commercials, and actually I think a lot of his commercials were Super Bowl commercials, which, if you guys don't know those things, those are pretty much like a major blockbuster production.
Yeah, the one that I watched actually yesterday, he did this Super Bowl, I think it was a Super Bowl commercial too, is for New Zealand Air. And basically it was they called it the most, I think they called it the, let me just look it up here. It was like the biggest commercial ever made or something. It has like all these guest star, like all these people from Lord of the Rings. It's got like Lord of the Rings battle scenes and costumes. And it's just like, it obviously was shot in New Zealand because, it's where Lord of the Rings was done. But just this ridiculously over the top ad, like almost like, like a parody. It comes across like a parody, but what's so funny about it is it's not a parody. It's actually a safety commercial for New Zealand Air. And they cast real life New Zealand flight attendants and staff, along with Peter Jackson's in it. In fact, my husband said, didn't Peter Jackson direct that? Because he's in it. And I said, no, Taika Waititi directed it. And that's, I think, one of the things that really got him noticed.
The balls on him to put Jackson in the commercial and direct
it. No kidding.
Yeah, like, and I've gotten that vibe. And I'm not saying anything negative. I don't know the man, Taika, but he is anything but shy. You can tell it in his. He is a very funny guy. I think sometimes he's always funny in interviews. He did a good BAFTA and a good Writing Academy speech talking about like actual like pragmatic and like like practical advice for writers that I was even intrigued by. But he is a jokester. He is not short on confidence, and he wants to be a part of the story, but he knows who's best to tell the story and who's best to put in there to channel the story through. We see his casting seems to be spot on for a lot of, especially Jojo Rabbit. Is amazing. He's able to get these younger actors. Child actors are notoriously difficult to deal with, and it's hard to know you're going to get a good performance out of them because, something like Jojo Rabbit, and we'll get to it, really, that's going to require that child to have a much broader scope of the world than most like 10-year-olds have. But what we do in the shadows is just fun, in my opinion. It's something I was talking to somebody from Chat One, and
it's kind of like a bunch of friends who've gotten together and like, hey, let's do a movie. And I know him and Jermaine, they had a hard time getting some financing. I actually saw they did like a crowdfunding for it. Mm-hmm. They did a video like, we need help getting this movie out to American audiences. So I guess they were able to sell it to a distributor in Australia or New Zealand, but they needed to get it to an American audience. And that movie came up on my radar a couple of years ago. I think it was on Netflix, and I was like, oh, what's this? This is interesting. And I think that might have been my first exposure to Taika, because as an actor, actually, in that, and because he's so good. And he said he was actually channeling his mother when he played that role.
Yeah. He's a grave robber or something? Yeah. Yeah. And that's ironic because that was my first known exposure to him, because of course I'd been watching Flight, but was not looking into who wrote an individual episode at the time. So this is a documentary. This is an example of him. He either has very silly people in very serious situations, or very serious situations, or very silly situations.
Shade of the Evening. She's just asking what movies. Sorry, we were talking about what they do in the shadows, which is it's kind of like The Office.
It's a mockumentary.
A mockumentary about a bunch of vampire roommates that are living together, going through all the, banal, day-to-day things that happen between roommates, male roommates, like people not cleaning the kitchen or doing the dishes. Like the shot of the kitchen was really funny. But at the same time, they also happen to be real life vampires, trying to, live together. And some of them are older than others.
They can't see each other they can't see themselves in mirrors, of course. So
they can't see each other themselves in mirrors.
So they have to get dressed in front, because they're, I would at this time, metrosexual was a big word. So it's definitely a part of what the movie is. Don't nail me to a wall for it. I'm just saying, they're portrayed as metrosexuals in it, and they're very much so involved with themselves and so forth.
And Jermaine's character is kind of, he's kind of into what is it?
S&M, yeah.
S&M. He's got like a dungeon, which is sort of funny. And then but they're all sort of based on different vampires. But I loved his really, I was like, obviously Jermaine's character was really over the top and everything, and the other roommates. But I loved Taika so much, because he's just so sweet. You know, he ends up with the girlfriend at the end, like was an old woman.
Yeah.
Like I just loved him so much. And he's like the gentleman vampire that we always sort of, you might imagine a
Yeah,
vampire being a gentleman.
like the tropey, yeah, like fitting
He's
all,
tropey. Yeah.
yeah. And yeah, it's just, it's a reality show, so it's documenting their day to day and all the drama. So it's like, foreshadowing for what's going to be going on with Thor as well, by taking these absurd characters, and then putting them into these situations that you can really still get some emotional connection and depth out of. And I think that it's done really well. I can't speak to the series that had launched a year ago.
No, I haven't seen the series either. I haven't watched it yet. Apparently, they are like, I think it's the same team. It is the same costume designer, but I did see that Jermaine has just left. So, and I would think that Taika would just be too busy to be involved in that. So I haven't double checked on that.
It's one of those things that I love it too much, and it's so much fun for me to go back and watch that I'll give it a chance, but all likelihood it's not going to be for me, because when it's a film that I can watch over and over again, that's good for me. I don't need the series. So, it's kind of like, it's one of those films, in my opinion, that ironically doesn't need a series, because the rewatchability of it kind of. I
agree.
Yeah.
And they're doing another one. I have that in the notes, but they're going to do one about werewolves. So it's going to be like a follow-up. Will be funny. So, it's like, it's kind of like fish out of water as well. You got that, that sort of idea of vampires who are hundreds of years old, dressing like it's, hundreds of years ago, Transylvania. But they're living in, like, I think it's New York City.
Yeah, it's the big city,
like modern day, or no, actually, maybe they're in. I can't remember what city they're in. They're in a major city.
No, it's Wellington, New Zealand, actually.
Wellington, New Zealand. Okay,
yeah,
so it is New Zealand. Okay,
but that is also where this follow-up movie, the werewolves living in modern day. So we'll see how much it follows. But if you're a fan of Murray from Flight of the Conchords, as always, with his meetings and his professional approach to all these wacky zany situations, making roll call for the two people, every single thing. He plays one of the werewolves in the original. So key influences, like you have here, the Lost Boys, Bram Stoker's, so he is pulling from Blade, Twilight, Buffy the Vampire. So you can see the absurdity in it, but also like there's also like these, Bram Stoker's Dracula, which, where Taika's character is being emulated from,
like or Lestat, even, like he's kind of like of the 18th century. He's got like the lacy cravat and the waistcoats, and he's kind of handsome and kept together looking, whereas the other guy is kind of a little bit like messier, and Jermaine's kind of just dark goth. He's gone that full goth sort of look with the black hair, and whereas I think that Taika's character is a little bit more like the gentleman vampire.
Yeah, he's a very sensitive man at the very least. Dating a much younger lady when she's she's 90, but he's like 700. So like, people talk about the age. But,
exactly.
Yeah.
It's so cute. They're adorable together. They are. They're just so cute.
So yeah, I can't recommend that one enough. What we're driving at here is we have another film in between Thor Ragnarok, which I think is when Taika came on the scene for a lot of people, meaning a lot of people started taking note and saying this guy's different, because it was the right series that needed something different to happen, and he made it happen. And as we all know with comic book movies, there's only a few ways to go about making them good. They're very highly criticized. To get critical acclaim with them is tough. It used to be, they don't even deserve the critical eye. Now it's, ever since The Dark Knight, it's, which we covered Nolan in the first episode, everything is judged like it's the piano. So we have in between that another film, Hunt for the Wilder People. This again is from what I've taken from all the cliff notes on it is another example of him being able to illustrate what's happening in a young mind, and do it in a visual medium that makes sense, because we're going to get to how Hitler, who he plays in Jojo Rabbit, wasn't even in the original book, but he decided to.
Yeah. And Sam Neill stars in it. I haven't seen it yet. You haven't seen it either. This is Hunt for the Wilder People, although I'd love to see it. And Sam Neill, of course, is a longtime New Zealander. He's also, I watched a really great little doc on him. He's a winemaker now too.
There you go.
And the people of New Zealand, they're very proud. I think they love to work with each other. It's sort of like Canadians, but there's 6 of us here. So whenever there's a job, we'll call up one of the other 5.
Yeah.
And
because the one has to be the one offering. I was going to correct you. I was like, you better
be the
not
one
say
offering.
6 because there has to be somebody that's
there's
offering
the other
Yeah.
5. So
Yes.
I'll call up one of the other 5 and I'll say, hey, we're thinking of putting on a show. Do you want to do it? So that's what I think what it's like in New Zealand.
Yeah, do you just dial 1 on your phone or 2 or 3
Yeah,
or 4?
we don't. No, we don't. We don't even need to call each other. We just throw a rock.
Yeah. It's a snowball. It's a land of always winter.
A snowball.
Yeah.
Yes, because we live in igloos.
But that's the fun thing about this series is, I'm not going to claim to be an expert on all of the filmmakers, but it is something that we're going to have some information for you guys on, hopefully whet your appetite for it. And if it's got the ingredients that you like for your palate in film or television, hopefully you'll go and explore it as well. So I will link all these, so you guys could watch them. Some of them are free. I know Boy is free on Prime, which I'm going to go watch because
and I have both Prime and Netflix. And I don't know if you're like this, but I kind of go back and forth between the two of them. I'm like, oh, it's something good on. Oh, there's a new one on here. I sort of do that. That's
I have terrible ADD. Yeah, I have terrible. Yeah.
I'm actually watching probably 4 series right now, and that's what I kind of do. Okay, where are we gonna? Which one's that on?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
I'll look for that. Hopefully it's on one of the streaming services because I think that would be. It sounds like a really sweet movie.
Yeah, another Wes Anderson vibe I feel with that. But let's get into the big gun here. Thor Ragnarok. He comes into this after, as you were telling me, maybe you'll know the story better because you've had professional dealings with the designers and people you attended an expose in Toronto, which has 4 out of the 6 people. But they were coming from other places. Yeah. So how did this come together, Heidi? How did this guy that made Hunt for the Wilder People, What We Do in the Shadows, Boy, and Eagle vs. Shark, plus 2 cars and 1, I forget, it's a short. There's very little before this that he had done.
Well, were we talking about this before the stream about how we made the 2 shorts? Did we talk about that yet?
No, we did not.
Oh, okay. So what happened was Taika was approached by Marvel to make 2 shorts. And you guys probably remember, it would have been on YouTube and so on, where Thor, in between movies, has a roommate named Daryl. I think it's Daryl. And, he's at work with Daryl and he's getting frustrated. Daryl's getting frustrated with him because he's he doesn't know how to, use email and all that type of thing. Because of course he's not from Earth. And so Taika did those 2. And Marvel were so impressed with him that they offered him Thor Ragnarok, because the original was done by Kenneth Branagh. And so he kind of actually inherited that story. That's one of the stories he actually didn't write. But according to this, most of it, a big chunk of it was improvised.
Yes.
And that is, again, into that more British style of, improv, Monty Python type thing. And I have to say, and as personally, as someone who has watched all the Marvel movies, that's probably my favorite.
Yeah, it was a much needed breath of fresh air. I know this was slightly before the James Gunn fiasco, but Guardians of the Galaxy, I think there was the injection of humor that was working much better, which we saw try to be emulated over in DCU, but it wasn't thought to be able to transfer over to especially Thor, which was spiraling downhill quickly after 2 films, because essentially after the first film, he is a static character. He didn't have, he's just, I guess he's trying to get with Jane, which back off Natalie, that's mine. But no, and
apparently she is going to be in the next one.
Oh, she did. Yeah. That's one thing I didn't like. Yeah. Those negotiations.
That was because they couldn't get her. She wouldn't do it. Excuse me, guys.
No, you're fine.
I just want to tell OTDA, thank you so much for putting those links.
He's the best. He's omniscient.
Yes, I really appreciate that. It's I'll say something and he'll have a link for it. It's like magic. That's amazing.
I dreamed something the other night and it was posted.
Did he put a link for it?
Yeah, he did it. Yeah, it's amazing. I'm not scared. I'm just accepting it.
That's awesome.
He's a goddess figure. I'll give you that. So with Thor, we do have the 2 movies. I think that Thor: Dark World is, I think that was one of the least successful movies.
Yeah.
Blockbuster, making money in the actual theaters as well as in the box office. I'm looking for the word box
Well,
office.
apparently, like Anthony Hopkins, who of course we love from Westworld, he wouldn't even star in the next Thor movie until he saw the script
Yeah.
and he saw that Taika was, attached to it, and then he agreed because he just had that little cameo.
Yeah.
He wasn't going to do it otherwise, and that scene wouldn't have been nearly as hilarious, if he wasn't in it. If you know what I'm talking about.
Yes, and then you have Hemsworth, who was disenfranchised with it as well. So
Mhm.
what I want to touch on what you were speaking about a moment ago about how he improvs a lot, and if you listen to any of his or watch any of these interviews he's given about screenwriting or how the production process goes, he uses the same line a lot, which I'm assuming is probably likely to be true. That jokes are written a year before the film, so it's done in some writer's room and blah blah blah. They think it's funny at the time, and then they get on set a year later, and then they say, hey, this is this funny thing this guy that's not even attached to this project anymore wrote on spec, and so he really believes in living in the moment and having a structure, a foundation, but also being playful, but that's a very, very thin line right there and a hard line to walk. You see Will Ferrell almost improvs like 80% of his films. When I was out in California, my buddies had to do I forget what it was, semi-pro. They were doing extra work for that. They were gone all freaking day, every day, because it took Will forever to do it. Because he just improvises everything, and it's not all funny. If anybody's ever done improv,
no, I know, because I'll watch. They'll do the outtakes, and he just goes through he'll go through like 20 things, and then they'll maybe pick one, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, that's sort of like finding the magic there. And can I mention about that one scene with Thor and the Hulk? Can I mention that?
Yeah, no, yeah. I mean, if you guys, spoiler alerts, we're going to be talking about these films.
Oh, you're going to dispose. Okay, so let me just find that. Yeah, so the shorts, by the way, they were called Team Thor. It was Daryl Jacobson was his roommate. So let me say.
I've got some pictures that you sent me.
Oh, here it is. Okay. So it says Thor's friend from work line. Okay. So there's that scene where they're in the arena, right? And he's waiting for his competitor, like gladiator theater. And out comes Thor and he's like, oh, we're friends from work.
Yeah.
I'm a terrible actor, but that line, this gave me goosebumps. It says that Thor's friend from work line about the Incredible Hulk was suggested to Chris Hemsworth by a Make-A-Wish child who paid a visit to the set on the day the scene was filmed. So that wasn't even written by the team. That was like a little child who had cancer, and they did that through the Make-A-Wish Foundation. Isn't that a wonderful story?
Yeah, that's heartwarming, and
it was hilarious, and they actually used it in the trailer. Because it was
I remember that because it was right at the end. It was almost like a stinger, but it was in a trailer, I want to say.
Yeah,
like it cut back, you know what I mean?
It's when the Hulk and him just first get reunited and was like, we're friends from work.
Yeah,
that's my terrible Chris Hemsworth impression.
Yeah, well, it is what it is. But we see this love for the source material, but we also see him be able to take Thor and make him funny without making him silly and not formative, not take away his I don't want to say masculinity, but Thor, his warrior prowess. They're able to have an emotional death because, as we all know, we joke when we're sad. Ragnarok, he goes through a plethora of ups and downs, a lot of downs. He ends that movie in a down, and we lead in. So he really breathes life back into the franchise. He's able to take a big Hollywood movie. That movie made a lot of money, and it had a great critical response as well. So it was a huge win. And from the interviews that I watched, even at the time of this, I got to say his confidence, whether he just puts it on for show or not, I think it's a good thing. He goes, I'm good, like the budget and all that. When they spoke about him never having that amount of money, he's like, I've done some pretty big commercials. So he's just ready to take it. He doesn't look at himself as this indie filmmaker that can't step into what they're doing. It's like, no, I can do it with this amount of money as well.
I think he knows he's paid his dues. When I looked at his filmography, like his commercial filmography, and I mean, it is true. I mean, you wouldn't get the budget like a feature film, but probably on a per hour, you would. Like it's probably on par. Because I remember when I had, I did some commercial work well, I was doing theater work, but I do some commercial work and I do some film work. And I would get on a commercial. I'd be like, oh my God, I've never been paid this much money in my life. Like, it's quite a difference when a corporation's paying for it. And the other thing I was going to say is that I think what's great about Taika also is he's playing to people's strengths. So he discovered that Chris Hemsworth is actually really funny, and he is, because I've seen him. And people would probably think, oh, he's good looking, or he's just a pretty face. He's not actually,
he's all right.
Why would he be funny? But he is really funny. So he decided, hey, I'm going to play to that. And that's why it paid off. And then him again with Tessa Thompson, and those two have been in 2 movies together now. Again, playing those two off each other. And Loki, of course, because I think that also Tom Hiddleston's really funny. So I think it just really, really worked.
And he knows too. He does speak about that in a lot of his interviews. He says not everybody was funny. The people that are funny are the people.
Yeah.
So you have to have an eye. You can't be like, oh, I'll make you funny. No, that's literally one of the hardest things to do as far as acting goes. If you're not funny, if you don't have timing, you can go. Nothing. I shouldn't say easier. It's all just different. But you can. I'd say somebody that wasn't naturally funny would have a better chance of learning how to do Shakespearean-esque plays than they would at learning how to be funny.
Well, it's interesting because oftentimes comedic actors make excellent dramatic actors.
Yes.
Because I think comedy is harder. Now, like, for instance, he knew probably not to do that with Cate Blanchett's character. I don't think she needed to be funny. I think she needed to be the dark, evil character that she was. And also he did know when to have some serious scenes. But then at the same time, like the elevator, like that scene in the elevator with Loki and Thor, where they're trying to decide what they're going to do. Like they have these like sort of little tricks that they play. And then I guess they decide to have him throw Loki or something. Like it was just so preposterous. Do you remember that with the bad guys? Like they're standing in the elevator and they're like, oh, which maneuver should we do? That little quiet little moment there. And then I think he takes Loki and he throws him against the bad guys. That's sort of their trick.
Their master plan.
Master plan. But it's something probably it's something they would have probably have done as kids.
Yes.
And I love that.
Well, I attribute it to, there's people that know or try, not know, this is because they don't know, they try to make something funny, meaning inject a joke into a situation that's funny. And then there's people that can find the funny in a situation. And I think that's what Taika does for the most part.
Because I mean, obviously, like a lot of it was improv. And it was scripted originally, but they obviously would have kept the structure there, but just on the day of, he would have been like, hey, why don't you try this? Although I did read also, he doesn't give actors a lot of direction. So I think he does trust the instincts of the actor, which is kind of like, you don't want to be like a helicopter director. You don't want to be like over them all the time. Some directors are very heavy handed like that. And then you have other directors that so being an actor himself, maybe he sort of just wants the actors to trust their own process. Plus, I mean, the whole team on that movie, I mean, Jeff Goldblum, like an amazing cast of actors in that.
If you're going to let people play, and I think it shows that he is playing to a degree, a large degree, but in a professional sense, you can't be a helicopter director because you're saying this is a safe area. This is for you to play. This is for you to try to do something different. And then you can't hover over them because that's in a direct, conflict with what you just projected. So yeah, I think that I'm not on set with these people, but I would imagine that you can't have it both ways. I imagine a lot of people do though. They'd be like, okay, so you're trying too hard. You're trying too hard. No, just let it flow. Now you're not caring. You know what I mean? It's like you back off.
I've been on set with set with directors like that.
Yeah, you can't fail here. You just fucking failed here. Thor Ragnarok, critical success, box office success, gets him some shine and puts him on the map, and then we transfer over to our next film in which we have actually it's not Jojo
by Jean-Baptiste.
Oh, Jean-Baptiste.
Jean-Baptiste. He's leaving.
Yes. Actually is Jojo Rabbit, which I just was so happy that I finally watched this film because it's
amazing.
It's a hard film to market, number one. I didn't get what it was about when I saw it. It didn't interest me at first. I just watched Death of Stalin, not made by Taika or anything, but
I love that movie.
yes, and
I loved it.
This is called Black Comedy. I didn't name
I
the
think
trope.
Sam Rockwell, is he in that as well? Sam Rockwell in Death of Stalin. It's an all-star cast.
Yeah, it's got
highly recommend it to everybody.
It's something known as black comedy. Okay, black comedy means that they show dark events, but they don't. They have humor. They inject humor and absurdity into it, but they don't shy away from the real harm and hurt of the what they're depicting on screen. Death of Stalin is obviously about the clusterfuck and the round robin leadership of the Soviet Union after the death of Stalin. That deals with some very serious stuff, especially Barrett, the angel of death. That guy, if you know anything about the history about that, that was even for me. I'm like, this guy, I'm looking at him, I'm like, that is literally Satan on screen right there. Like, so
yeah, Stephen Buscemi's in it.
Plays Khrushchev.
A fabulous actor.
And you have a situation in which you're able to convey an important message, but it's through a medium that is more effective because people are more willing to immerse themselves in these situations and be open, maybe because they're off guard. It's the best way I guess I can put it, is because they're not expecting to have like this, like, change of perception or mind or whatever, but because they think they're watching something that's all funny, and then snap, something happens in it, in their base back in reality. But it's a good watch. It's something that is very hard to do, right? You have to walk a very thin line. Again, it's very dangerous for him to take all of his capital that he's built up with Thor Ragnarok. I think this speaks to his character. Now, in all fairness, this was a novel that was read to him as a young child, called
in here, I think.
Yeah, it's in here.
Caging Skies.
So
by Christine Lunens.
So he was read this by his mother at a young age, and this is a story about Jojo, a Nazi youth in Germany. I don't know the exact time frame, except for it does showcase the end of the war, so I don't know how many years passed during it.
Yeah, it's the 40s.
Yeah, so you're looking at some 43 to 45 maybe. So this Hitler youth camp, it depicts right away how Hitler was like the Beatles to people. Like he was like a rock star. Like he was a terrible piece of crap. We all know that. But, these people didn't support him at first because he wasn't at least perceived as charismatic. So this is this little boy essentially just trying to fit in and be a part of a group. And this is even, I think, explicitly, overtly stated by Scarlett Johansson, saying you're not a Nazi. You just want to be a part of a group and you want to be accepted. So, you can see how easily a child especially could fall into that. I mean, these Hitler youth camps and all of this anti-Semitic rhetoric and propaganda is disgusting.
Yeah, it's kind of like a Nazi Boy Scouts. That's what, or Brown, and they had them for girls as well.
Yeah, and it's before they have the sex camps.
And then you could, yes, exactly, in band camp.
Yeah, they slip in band camp. But so you have this story about this kid he has now the injection here, and I think the one thing that I really took away, and I think this is my biggest revelation about Taika, not saying I knew so much about him before, but that Hitler, the character in which he plays the imaginary friend, which is Hitler in Jojo's head. That's not in the original book. And when we talk about a lot of the series in which we talk about specifically, I'll say Outlander is a pretty good example of a faithful depiction of a novel into a visual media. But again, please respect mediums, people, and don't act like it's apples to apples. It's very hard to do, and I thought it was genius because, number one, he plays Hitler, so again, risky. Number two, this is an internal monologue within this child's head within this book. A lot of things we deal with, A Song of Ice and Fire, is all this internal dialogue that you have to convey visually. So what does he do? He injects in this, this imaginary friend that is Hitler in there, so you get a better idea of Jojo's mindset. And it's overly silly, overly absurd, but it is also very, very true to the overall sentiment of that time. And I think it shows you both comedians are so good at doing drama because for the most part, people that are funny are pretty freaking sad. A lot, it is an escape.
Sad clowns.
Yeah, Tears the Clown. Comedy's invented so the miners can go home and forget that they're miners, not young adults, but coal miners.
Yeah, exactly.
But I thought,
I got what you said right away.
And I thought it was so beautifully done, and I was so ashamed for not watching it sooner. And I think that, again, I didn't coin this term, it's just called black comedy, is something that is a very, very advantageous medium to go down if you're looking to convey a message in a way that actually people might open their eyes to. Because a lot of times, there's plenty of documentaries out there about World War II. Plenty. I love them. I'm a history buff, but it's this, I feel, hopefully got a lot of people in the theaters, or probably after the fact even more, to watch something and get that, maybe hit off guard with it. But
like Mel Brooks, who, if anybody knows, did The Producers, is a huge fan of it. And of course, like Mel Brooks, some of his movies may not have, done like, they're racist in by today. Well, they're racist just generally.
Yeah, they're just racist. Yeah. Don't walk it back,
but
Heidi.
The Producers, is a parody, right?
Yeah.
Because people were like, "Oh, that's so horrific that they would do that." I'm like, it's done by Mel Brooks. I mean, he's kind of the time. He would be like, I'm trying to think who that other director is. He's Jewish as well, who's done, he does really offensive movies. But it's basically just, telling a story.
It's not Woody Allen.
Not Woody Allen.
He's just offensive.
It'll come to me. It'll come to me. But that's sort of what he's doing. He's sort of like, one of the things I was reading, he did no research on Hitler. He did a lot of research though on the period, but he did no research on Hitler because he wanted to just kind of give a big F you to Hitler. I'm not going to do any research on you. I'm going to put on a fat suit. But his uniforms apparently there was a lot of research done that they were accurate.
Well, and I'm going to put those up on screen because you provided us what you're saying that okay, so he doesn't need to do. I'm currently listening to a book, and this guy is one of. Oh
yes, thank you, Sacha Baron Cohen. Thank you.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think Mel Brooks would have been like the Sacha Baron Cohen of his time. So when he did The Producers, which have you ever seen that?
It's been a while, but I've seen
Justin
it.
Thomas.
Yes.
It's about these two guys who decide to put on a show, and they want it to flop, so they basically do a musical about Hitler. I think it's a musical about Hitler. And they hire this crazy playwright. They find his manuscript, this crazy Nazi guy, and they put on his show. So of course a lot of people were totally horrified by it, but it's Mel Brooks, so it's like there's some sort of like satire there. And I think that's the same with this. There's quite a bit of satire in this, but at the same time, it's incredibly sad.
Yeah, it is. Like I'm reading this book by Aaron Bork, or listening to it, called The Idea, which is, I've had better, but he was part of Band of Brothers. He was one of the screenwriters, that adapted it from Stephen Ambrose. So I want to say is the writer of the book. But anyways, he speaks a lot to what you were saying, especially to like about over research and stuff like that. But in this particular, situation, this is a child's imaginary friend that he thinks he wants to be a Nazi, so he wouldn't actually know anything about Hitler, you know what I mean? So like he doesn't need to know about Hitler to play this part, because this is again the imagination of this small child. First off, again, of just this kid can act his fucking ass off. Like this he's amazing. So good. Like I cannot.
And JoJo's friend as well, his little friend.
Oh my god,
I loved him. Absolutely. So the only sort of knowledge he might have about Hitler would be the posters, the propaganda. Mm-hmm. So when he sees him, it would be like how he would see him, or maybe if there was some propaganda film he might have seen. That would be his only exposure to it.
And he's going to a summer camp, and he wants to have the counselors, just like you have your counselors in, the 80s movies. They're a bunch of teenage jerks, but these are, Gestapo, essentially. And you have a situation where he just wants to fit in. And this kid, again, is another example of there's a lot of childish adults around him. Sam Rockwell is amazing in it.
Oh, yeah.
And you have, oh, God.
Effie Allen.
Alfie Allen, yep.
Alfie Allen is in it from Game of Thrones.
Yeah, as you guys can see, Heidi provided me. Thank you so much for these with these pictures.
I got his name wrong though.
Yeah,
well, I said Effie.
Yeah, it happens. this is him talking to Hitler about, the kids are calling him a rabbit, and he's telling him that rabbits don't have to be, bad, that rabbits are smart and blah, blah, blah. And this is him. This is a good example, too, of how to like showcase, okay, so we want our protagonist to be liked and be able to be redeemed, because you can't just have a complete, Nazi sociopath as your protagonist. So he's stealing this hand grenade here in this scene, and then he throws it to prove to everybody that he's not like a scaredy cat or a scaredy rabbit, I didn't know, and he throws it, hits a tree, and what better way to kind of knock him down a few steps but to blow him up with a hand grenade almost immediately. But he's a very matter-of-fact, very mature in the sense of like how he not in his beliefs, but mature in the way in which he handles himself, right? Like, Taika's half Jewish, Sasa is asking. His mother was Jewish, which actually traditionally means that you would be Jewish if your mother is Jewish. And he went by Cohen for a while. Mm-hmm. I was reading in his biography. So I think depending if he was doing writing, he would go by Cohen, and he would go by Waititi if he was doing more creative kind of things. It was the literature was always Cohen. And then, it's whatever one hit first, and it was the visual. So so that obviously informed his sort of the way he views the world, and how he this story. It definitely speaks to, it's not easy, even though this was a novel first. It is a huge risk, and it is known in Hollywood that when you get capital for doing something that is successful, right? Like the studios reward you. People are going to give you more opportunities. A lot of time, like Hugh Jackman is notorious for using all of his Wolverine capital on the world's best show or greatest show. That's what he picked. They said, Hugh, you did the freaking rat thing for 17 years, Wolverine, the muskrat or whatever it is, the hedgehog, whatever. I don't know what Wolverine. It's a Wolverine.
The muskrat.
I call them muskrats. Yeah, but I'm just trying to be silly about it. You did the moose.
He's got the big mutton chops.
You did the muskrat there, son. You can get whatever you want. He's like, world's greatest show. Have you seen the protests lately? He's like, world's greatest show. And they're like, all right. So they had burned it all down. Never seen it. I'm just saying it wasn't a smart move. So, it shows guts. It does help that he has a connection to it. Probably, again, just to give him the fortitude to go forth with it, right? In the confidence, because he knows it helped him as a child, and he's a half Polynesian and Jewish. So,
someone's asking about Scarlett. Scarlett was amazing.
So good.
And she is actually Jewish. Like Natalie Portman, Scarlett Johansson, a lot of people don't know that. She is actually Jewish. I thought she did a great job.
In Shade, we are. I showed them in the intro. We've got 12 weeks. This is week 3, so we, as of right now, have 9 more episodes. And somebody will probably pick up Wes Anderson. I know that. Yeah, I think that it's not necessary for him to have been Jewish for him to be able to have the right to do this movie. But it doesn't hurt.
Absolutely
it
not.
Doesn't hurt because it emotionally has touched him heavier than some, I guess. And not that I don't care. I'm not Jewish. I definitely care about the Holocaust.
Well, and his mother read it to him when he was a child. Yeah. And so obviously it affected him. And I was actually kind of shocked at part of the story. Like, I didn't know that was going to happen. Like, are we talking spoilers here or whatever?
We'll give a quick warning, because I think it kind of hinges on the moment you're about to talk about, and I didn't see it coming either. And when we talk about all the silliness, but I say how again these comedies, they are satire and parody and absurdity, but the real events, the macro is that.
Yeah, I expected his mom, I didn't think that his mom full on bought into the whole, Hitler Youth and all that type of thing. But at the same time, I didn't think that she would be a rebel. I didn't get that sense about her. So what happens is he discovers that his mother's been harboring a Jewish girl in their spare room closet or what have you.
It's in his dead sister's room, and there's
dead sister's room. Yeah. And so, and that was just sort of like a really shocking point, because that totally changed everything, right? Like, there was a monumental shift that happens there during that scene, because you realize now the mother is putting her family in danger and putting themselves at risk for doing this. And then, of course, when you have the Gestapo, which is, I have to say, is one of my favorite scenes in a movie I've seen in years, where the Gestapo come and they're all like, Heil Hitler, Heil Hitler, Heil Hitler, Heil Hitler. And actually, I wrote it down. How many times did they say that?
It's like 13 times. I just watched an interview with Stephen Merchant.
It's crazy. Yeah. And Stephen Merchant apparently was so nervous about playing that. And he's great. Isn't he good in that?
He's like, why does he look 8 feet? I know he's tall, but is he really that tall? Like, it made him look like, I don't think
they put him on a crate, apparently.
Okay.
They put him on a crate to make him just look like ridiculously tall. But that's probably one of the most Monty Python scenes I've seen since Monty Python. It is so funny because at the same time, it's awful. But I think what Taika was saying is just like how they would have these rituals that were just kind of really dumb. And it's like a lot of things, right?
It's a sociological perspective more than a micro psychological one, even though that's very much their presence within this film. But this society has bought in hook, line, and sinker into all this heiling and all of this, whether or not they were aware of everything that was going on or not. It got pretty freaking absurd. And we've got the picture up right here. And so everybody would have to heil when you go into a room to show your allegiance to, the Führer. So how silly would they be trying to keep themselves alive and show who's the best little Nazi?
Yeah. And then also when I saw this, it immediately, there's this one guy that you have on the left that reminded me of the scary character from Raiders of the Lost Ark. The guy who goes in to see Marion and he burns his hand. He's like, oh, I just have to, he's like really slimy and disturbing. That's Raiders of the Lost Ark is another movie that I really enjoy the way they deal with the Nazis. I think it's, it was funny because when we were talking about Westworld and we had the scene with the Nazis, and I was like, oh, I love me some Nazis.
Yeah, no, you were talking about the costumes and the way you,
I was talking about the costumes.
Yeah.
Because, I am always, the costumes in this are excellent. Actually, can I say one thing about the costumes in this movie, Justin?
Yeah, absolutely. You can say whatever you want.
Well, one of the things, and this just kind of really vindicated my feelings, is that when Taika was doing research on this, Maya Rubens is the costume designer, by the way. She also worked with Taika on Thor Ragnarok. So obviously they had a good relationship. Maya's C. Rubio. She's a Mexican costume designer, and she was nominated for this movie. But one of the things he was talking about is that when he did some research, he discovered that Germany in World War II, apparently this is like loosely based maybe on Nuremberg, was very vibrant and fashionable, and was interested in shying away from shying away from traditional war films, showing it as dreary and dark, instead presenting the town as a seemingly celebratory place and dressing characters as stylishly as possible. So we saw like Scarlett Johansson's outfit. She's always dressed very sharply. And this is one thing that when Game of Thrones came out, like when we started moving into the later seasons, I got like really mad about it because I went and talked to my dad, and both my parents were children during World War II. And I said to my dad, well, what were people wearing during World War II? And he says, well, will they be wearing the same clothes they always wore? Because they're not going to just like throw their clothes out, right? And so like, for instance, the women, if they had nice dresses, they would still continue to wear their nice dresses, whether they be brightly colored or darkly colored. And so I really love that about the movie, that you have all these beautiful, vibrant colors. And of course, we follow the shoes quite a bit too, which becomes, really pivotal. The scene where where Jojo's with his mom, they're riding their bikes, and then they show her kind of walking along the wall. And, and I remember seeing her shoes, and I kept thinking about that. And of course, it pays off later in the movie. So that was one of the things when I was reading about that, I'm like, yes, thank you. Because of course, with Game of Thrones, they kept going on about, well, it's war and this is serious and we got to shut down the color and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, that doesn't even make any sense. Because if we're talking about the 100 Years' War, we're talking about, the Wars of the Roses, the queens and the kings and the kingdoms, they wouldn't have suddenly like thrown out their, brightly colored hued outfits.
It's perpetual war, number one.
Yeah,
so there's never a time of no war.
It's always war.
Yeah.
They should have just said that, always war, instead of naming them.
What the hell is 100? Yeah, it's just fucking, it's the Middle Ages. Yeah, there you go.
It's a continuing perpetual war.
Yeah, it's Europe.
Oh, no problem. OTDA.
The one thing I want to touch on is how important I think it is to do things like show that Hitler was, like the opening montage sequence was essentially like, like I probably could match it up with some Beatles tour,
And they had the Beatles, like, were featured prominently. I had read that they did a tour of Germany, and so they did record some of those songs, their popular songs, in German.
Well, it's important to realize that it was cosmopolitan, that it wasn't all dark and dreary, and there wasn't people with evil mustaches and twirling around and they were evil pieces of crap, and they achieved evil because of this aesthetic and this lifestyle in which they were projecting that wasn't true to the actual ideology. But if we keep thinking monsters are going to come at us with horns on their heads saying they're monsters, we're going to keep getting steamrolled by the real monsters. So it's very authentic and very, I think, important to depict these types of things. Again, with this type of comedy, I think it has to be done right. And this was, and Death of Stalin was. These are the two top ones for me. This could very easily go very bad. I don't feel it does. But you have to depict these things with a sense of realism, because people keep looking for monsters. Monsters don't exist in that sense. This was cosmopolitan. These people they were sold a bill of goods. But there was, at least for the very first few years, once they finally bought into it, they bought in because it came with perks to them, obviously not to a large percentage of the demographic that paid the price. And that's the horrible aspect of it. And that's what has to be depicted, that these people made bad choices, but it wasn't, again, this pure evil, because that's never the way in which things go down. It slowly happens. You slide into it.
And I think they do a really good job with like, for instance, not just showing that it's, the Jews were affected, but it would be, gays, homosexuals. It would be
mentally impaired,
mentally disabled, mentally ill, even like just their enemies, or handicapped, anybody like that. So how they deal with the Sam Rockwell character and also the Alfie Allen character.
Those triangles. Did you see those triangles?
Yes, actually, yeah. So I had that pointed out that they did that. So the triangle, and everybody, I don't know if anybody knows this, but so yeah, in the camps they would have worn a triangle, whereas the Jews would have worn a Star of David. So that's of course why the LGBTQ community has sort of taken that back as their symbol.
Yeah. And they, they show the absurdity of it all. You have an Anne Frank situation. He lives with an imaginary Hitler in his head, and then lives with a pretty much hidden away girl of Jewish descent that his mother is protecting. He finds this out. He views his mother as a traitor for a little bit. And we do get that big, just, knock you down moment, knock you out moment with these, finding out that Scarlett Johansson, the mother, as he's walking by, he looks at some shoes and recognizes them. And this is, at the hangman's post. So she pays a very dire and dear price for this. So it's very emotional.
Absolutely. And I was reading that originally the Sam Rockwell character, who is supposed to be gay in this, he originally had thought about having that as well, have Sam Rockwell, but he thought I don't know, he said here something about, well, this is a really weird comment, but he says, I don't like the idea of seeing people hang.
Yeah.
And that's what led in part to the reveal of Rosie's death without showing her face, which I thought was really impactful because we followed her shoes, right? He added that seeing your dead loved one is an intimate thing, and that we didn't have permission to see what JoJo saw. And I thought that was really amazing. But originally he did think about the Sam Rockwell character going that way as well. But I love kind of how he kind of designs a costume for himself, like I'm going to go out with a bang kind of costume.
Yeah.
And I love that. And then they just come out like, you don't know what's going to happen. You assume they'll be killed, but just, we're going to go out fighting, and we're going to, I found there was a lot of empowerment, like even with the girl who's being harbored. I felt like she was a strong character. Like oftentimes like Anne Frank, for instance, is a really strong character. And so it's nice to see that depiction. Whereas, you think that, rather than having JoJo be like the rescuer, she herself is actually quite strong and capable.
She is not just a victim. She doesn't need anybody to save her. She is, yes, being harbored, their
Yes.
terms, but at the same time, she's teaching JoJo. She is a human being. She had a life before with a boyfriend before. She's just not the Jewish girl. There's the Jewish girl. There's the depiction of a Jewish person. You know, it is very much so making sure that it is a depiction of a person, which is the whole point. You know,
and I was talking about Sacha Baron Cohen earlier. Like, there's this movie where he refers to like Jews as cockroaches. Like, look at the cockroaches. And so Jojo, at the beginning, when he first meets her, he kind of thinks of her as not really being a human being. He doesn't see her as he sees her as lesser than, because of course he's been told this, he's been taught this. And even though his mother is trying, but carefully, because you know, the problem with the Hitler Youth is they could turn in their parents. I don't know if anybody's ever seen Brazil, but it's kind of like that. You know, like your neighbor could turn you in, your own child could turn you in if you said the wrong thing. So she has to be really careful. And so
also for his safety, the child's safety,
and also for his safety. Yeah. So she's so everything he's learned is skewed. It's kind of like, it would be like, I was thinking about this today. If you lived in North Korea your whole life and you've never been exposed to anything outside of there, you would have a very like narrow world vision. And, you know, cause you were talking about how Hitler would have been like really popular, kind of like a pop star, but part of that would have been the propaganda and the brainwashing and the, you know,
Goebbels literally ran, and we have super. He wanted to change because they called it Minister of Propaganda. I looked into this like a few years ago because my grandpa was in World War II, blah, blah, blah. I met a guy at the Smithsonian. I got a book about a German boy in Berlin during this time that actually his father is in the Luftwaffe. I can never say that right. I tried saying that in a video recently, and I'm sure I'm sure I failed miserably.
I tried. So I don't have a history. At least my name is Heidi, though. I could pretend I'm German.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Bruce C. Moore, for the super chat.
Oh, what a sweetie!
No, he's fantastic, a very intelligent man right there. So yeah, if you have any insights or anything, just let us know. We're just trying to give a broad view of Taika's work, and I'm very much so, if you can't tell, just head over heels about Jojo Rabbit. I really am. It's a lot to do with, I'll admit it, I don't know if I wasn't paying attention to the marketing or if I just wasn't paying attention in general, but I wasn't like excited to watch it for some reason. You know what I mean? Like, and then so it made it that much better in the acting and in that over just exaggeration of Sam Rockwell. Like you're saying, he's sitting there and he's got the horn blowing at that final Berlin stand, which children, Hitler Youth, if you've ever seen the twitched out hand shakes, the last known videotape of Hitler pinning a bunch of medals on 12-year-olds, you know, it's very true. I like his friend says, his name is lost on me right now, the out of shape child.
And he's got like the cardboard armor.
Yeah.
I was just like, oh my God, that is just hilarious.
He goes, I don't know if you've seen the Japanese or their own allies and they're not looking too Aryan. It's like, you know, like it's all these like jokes, like it's terrible. Like, it's a bad time to be a Nazi.
It does feel a little bit like Wes Anderson at times. A little bit of that. Wes Anderson is another, you know, you were mentioning you're going to bring him, do him because he's brilliant. One of the reasons why I watched this movie is because I wanted to do a roundup of the best movie, like the best costumes last year. Mm-hmm. And so I saw, and we were doing an end of the year, Oscars sort of video. And so I said, well, I have to watch this. And I'm so glad I did because I might've missed it, but costume wise, of course, it didn't win. Another movie that I didn't think deserved to win won. I think this one probably did deserve to win. It was really amazing. And as I said, Maya, who did the costumes on this, also did the costumes for Thor, but you can tell she did her research. It felt like really immersive. So even though it was kind of like the language was probably a little bit contemporary,
mm-hmm. Yeah, they say what's up, and I noticed that.
It's a little bit contemporary in the jokes and so on, but you know, I still felt very immersed in it, like in that story, in that town, and you know, just like Scarlett's, like her little hats that she wears, And even though, like, they don't have a lot of money, but everyone's always sharply dressed. Everyone's always like, Sam Rockwell's kind of funny though, because he always has his jacket undone.
Yeah.
Which probably would never have been allowed.
Well, he's like he's like the failed like
he's
hot
failed,
shot.
yes.
So like like, and he has a nice kind of redemption and still gets what he's got coming.
Yes.
And
someone else mentioned Rebel Wilson. She's really good.
And
I
hate
too.
her. I cannot usually stand her in things.
Me neither.
I shouldn't say hate. That's a very strong word, but I very much so dislike her in things. And she is very good at this.
She's really good in this. It's funny because I decided maybe when the pandemic first hit, I ended up watching all of those Sing movies that she's in, like all those Pitch Perfect. I watched all 3 in a row, like in 1 week. And I just turned to my husband and I said, okay, I'm sorry. Can you explain to me what the deal with Rebel Wilson is? Like, she is just not really that good in this.
Yeah.
But she's excellent in this. So again, it comes to casting. He's really good at casting people. I mean, with Thor, obviously, he would have been given the people he had for the most part.
Which is another issue in itself. I did want to mention with the awards that he did win the Oscar for Best Screen Adaptation, adaptation to a screenplay. So
making him the first Indigenous Maori, like Indigenous generally, person ever nominated, and the first Maori to ever win. Which is actually, by the way, Justin, I was going to say, this is another reason why I wanted to do Taika, because there's lots of great white directors, but I just it was like, it'd be really nice to do someone who's not your typical American white director. That's another reason why.
Absolutely, and I'm happy that you brought it because it has to be authentic. Every guest is picking their own person. I will do as much research as I could possibly do. Obviously, I'm hosting the show, and I'm well versed enough to at least say, hey, this is what they've done. This is what I liked about it. This is what I think was done well. If you know me well enough, you'll know what my palette's like, and you'll go on. And I was looking at the list, and I was talking to somebody because we've got Tony Teflon doing Spike Lee, and
oh, that's amazing.
But I said there's a lot of white guys on here. I said, but also I want true representation, so I want content creators that can represent who we're showcasing properly, because I can't force that. You know what I mean? I can't go out of my wheelhouse and just do it. I can always broaden my horizons, as I always do, and try harder to learn about other directors and other people of different groups. But George R.R. Martin said it once before that, there isn't a lot of sci-fi writers, and now thank God there are, of different color. There's a lot of old white guys writing fantasy and sci-fi. He said we want to inspire African-American writers, Latino writers, Asian writers, right? Like, because that's true representation. You can't sit a bunch of white guys down. I've been in those rooms, not like big Hollywood rooms, but just for Second City and stuff, and be like, okay, write something that's funny for African-American. No, you have to have somebody that has the voice. So I think it's very important to showcase those voices and to have somebody that is learned and informed about those voices, because I don't like shoehorning things in. It has to be done authentically. So yeah, unfortunately, there is a lot of old white directors. So this list is going to keep getting as diverse as humanly possible.
And, I'm like, I was just thinking this, I didn't even think this, but I'm like, oh, I probably could have, picked a female director, but that kind of just immediately hit me. And then the other one I'm thinking about right now is the director of Parasite. Like that's another director I probably would have been interested in doing.
Parasite was in contention
Bong Joon-ho.
with this. Yeah.
What's that?
Parasite was in contention for a few awards with JoJo.
It won, which is but one of my favorite movies that came out last decade was Snowpiercer. That's him.
Yes.
So that that would have been probably my other choice. But yeah, because I'm trying to think, I'm going, this is terrible. I should be thinking about a female director, but I can't think of any female directors at the moment. That I know everyone's always going on about Greta Gerwig.
Mm-hmm.
But to be honest with you, I haven't really seen anything of hers that I've been like, oh my God. You know what I mean?
And like I said, because we've got John coming back on to do the Dennis Villeneuve. I cannot say his last name.
Villeneuve, I think.
Yeah, he's doing Dune.
Denis. He's French Canadian.
Denis Villeneuve, I don't know.
He's one of the other Canadians.
Yeah, he's one of the 6. But anyway,
he's one of the 5 I call.
What I'm getting at with I always find a way to have to say that name when I don't. There's 13 other people I could. But the point is, people can come back. You're always welcome to come back. So, and I'm happy that you approached this in a way that you were passionate about the work, and it was somebody that, wasn't just an old white guy. So that's what I don't,
yes.
You can't beat yourself up over stuff like that. We can just always try to be more versed and more and widen our spectrum there, get a bigger knowledge base and get some true representation. So yeah, we will add some more people to it. And I just want authentic. I want it to be authentic no matter what it is. So I think that
I tend to it's funny. I think some people tend to want to watch certain directors. For me, it usually has to do with a style. I'm okay, I love that director's style. I'm probably going to really enjoy what they do. So I'm like that with Taika. I'm like, I really love his style. I really love Wes Anderson's style. So that's the type of thing, I immediately, as soon as a Wes Anderson movie comes out, it's just Taika hasn't been around as long as some of these other directors. And I think that's partly what it is. He just needs to have more opportunities. And do you want to just quickly chat about The Mandalorian?
Yeah, and I just wanted to, because we'll cap it off with that and just speak to what you're saying. It's, I always talk about content should be like a sponge that we squeeze to get the most enjoyment out of these properties as possible. So having, these people that we cover, I always relate it to a palate, a taste in food. The ingredients in the lasagna you like. You figure out, maybe some other foods that you like that have those same ingredients, meaning Taika's approach, Taika's, writing, Taika's directing, Taika's acting, his sense of humor. I would say his movies are, and this is a compliment, are not uniform. I bet, I couldn't pin the tail on the screenplay and link them all together. But that's a good thing. He's very versatile. But there are ongoing themes and, just he is so good at finding young actors to play, and that is, I don't know if people understand how hard that really is. I don't know, it's hard enough to get adults to be good actors, to get these kids to play these main roles. I mean, they are always top billed. So I just think it's fantastic.
Well, that's why I'm always amazed by shows now I haven't seen it because I'm afraid of clowns. But I like Stranger Things, for instance. That show blows me away because I'm like, how is it that they could get a group of kids together that are so talented? And because, the rule about you don't work with animals or children.
Yeah.
Film, right? Because
I don't go to my niece's Christmas pageant plays because I've seen adults do it. And I went to one and I was like, it sucks. You all suck. Yeah. I just stood up. I'm not allowed.
It's terrible. My kids hate going to plays with me. If I have to go to a kid's show, because I always just sit there and complain about the lighting or something.
Yeah. Amateurs.
I'm they're in the dark there. What's going on?
This piece of
shit. Get a couple of lamps. They got all of the kids are in the dark.
Yeah, they can't.
Yeah, and I'm brutal to go to. A little school pageant.
Mr. YouTube over there doesn't think it's good enough. I'm not allowed. What a piece of crap! But I'm like, I seen adults do this. They're way better.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because then, of course, my husband works in AV, so whenever we go to some kind of pageant or concert or something, I'll go Jack, go fix that, would you? There's well, and he's had to a few times.
Well, and also just, it is very advantageous to have that skill because to show a story through a child's eyes is very advantageous to the sense of they can ask questions adults can't, because they have that childlike wonder. So they're very good to get exposition out and let you know what's happening. There's sometimes kids just thrown into movies to say, Daddy, who's she? And he's like, well, that's Lynda. She's the hot shot, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But this is not that. So, but he was a part of The Mandalorian, and you're going to go in and you're going to cap us off with that. I cannot express or try to convey enough how much I think you guys should at least give his work at least a once over. And Jojo Rabbit, I don't know how good of a job I did selling it to you, but I'm trying to sell it to you, and I would never try to sell you something I didn't think was worth your time.
Yeah, if you haven't seen any of his work, I would start there. I would start with that movie because he won a best adaptation. It's a beautiful movie. It looks visually beautiful. Mm-hmm. The story is amazing, and the acting, everything's top notch about it. And I really loved it. And you've seen it a second time. I haven't seen it. I'm going to watch it a second time.
Yeah.
And I'm going to check out The Wildebeest. But just before we leave, I just want to let you guys know that if any of you are watching The Mandalorian, so Taika plays one of the androids in it. Do I have it? What he plays? And he directed the last episode, which is actually one of my favorite episodes. There was like the show started really strong and then it kind of dipped a little bit. And then at the end, it really came out. And I was just going to tell you that I did that for Star Wars Day. I interviewed the guy who created the lightsaber, right?
Yep.
And so in the interview, I said to him, hey, have you seen, Roger Christian's his name, have you seen The Mandalorian? And what do you think? And he says, I love it. It's Jon Favreau is the producer. And he also got like George Lucas to sign off on it. And
I watched his cooking show. Sorry, like and they go to Lucas. That's the only. I don't know why I watched that, but not The Mandalorian.
And
sorry,
I think that's actually how Taika and John came together, because John directed most of the Iron Man movies with Marvel. So I think they're tied together through Marvel. So that was just like a really nice collaboration. But what Roger Christian said is he thought that a lot of the show looked a lot like the original paintings that were done by Ralph McQuarrie. It has that sort of, and it's like sort of a spaghetti Western, like kind of like Westworld, you know, like you got that.
You either walk into the town to stir up trouble or you walk in to save it, cowboy.
Exactly. And so that's sort of how they treat it. And it's a nice little story. Like they do like a little story serial every week. And so Taika plays the android, but he directed the very last episode called Redemption, which I think was probably one of the best episodes of the series. So if you guys haven't seen, if you're Star Wars fans, the other thing is that Taika is going to be possibly doing another Star Wars movie.
Yeah. Now, is that's just possible, right? And I do also want to mention, I'm going to link a few things here really quick. So I'm be on my phone looking down. I'm putting his TED Talk in. It's an early one, guys, and it's a really good one. And it shows a lot about how he sees perspective in art. But go ahead, Heidi. I just don't want you to think I'm being rude.
I was just trying to see where it says that I just read that he's got so much stuff going on. It says Lucasfilm announced that Waititi would be one of the directors. Oh no, this is that. Sorry. Yeah, I just read that he's going to be doing a Star Wars movie. He's doing a sequel to Thor Ragnarok. He's doing maybe potentially 2 shows for Netflix. So he's a super busy dude.
Yeah, and he deserves it. I mean, I'm linking this TED Talk right here. It seems like they're going again. It's like a round robin situation with who's doing the Star Wars film. I'm gonna watch The Mandalorian.
Okay, all I can say is, who's not happy that Dave and Dan aren't doing?
Oh, did they do something not good? I've never heard. Yeah, I don't
they
know.
were. Yeah. Well, do you remember that whole thing? There was this talk about them doing Star Wars.
Yeah, they lost.
I think. And then they lost that, but they were also supposed to do this other thing about Confederate, which
that was what they used their capital for at first. God, I mean, just to show the ignorance.
It uses no one.
Oh my God. No, absolutely. And we'll have you on again, and I'd
love to.
We'll have another round of great discussions about these storytellers. Again, it's to whet your guys' appetite, not give a whole filmography or anything like that. Obviously, I'd like to revisit this at one point. With you.
Oh, sorry. I have to make a comment here. Shade of the evening. When you say I've only seen the first 3 Star Wars movies, do you mean the original trilogy or do you mean the prequels? Because if it's the original trilogy, you just can stop there.
Yeah, one is like one is like I'd say Blue Moon beer, which is my favorite, and another is like Bud Ice.
Yeah.
Not good. One's good, one's not. Yeah.
I still call Star Wars Star Wars. I refuse to call it A New Hope.
Yeah, it is what it is.
Although Rogue One is really good. I liked Rogue One.
It's a standalone story. It works. Well, it's connected. Whatever. Yeah. It works though. I always love talking to you, and it's always great to have somebody in because you got all those. Again, the links are in the information. I know a lot of you guys that are here right now, but a lot of you guys that are watching after, go check out Heidi's channel. She actually has great interviews with insiders, and she does great work.
Aw, thanks so much.
Usually, you got to get somebody on to talk about costumes on a channel. She is the costume designer on her channel, so she's not she is the professional. But
I love talking movies and TV shows with you, Justin. This is one of the things I love about our friendship is that I don't have to just talk about costumes. We can talk about other things, and I really enjoy that.
Well, I preach, and it's because I push that you're a professional in that specific area for a reason, because it's important to know, because I really take pride in having you on for that. But also I would like to push the truth and the narrative that really is why you understand story and are qualified to talk about story even more so, because costume design is a pivotal part of the story. So you understand, you're not just looking at it and being like, I liked it, didn't like it. You're looking at it and seeing tone.
Yeah.
You're seeing the general vibe of it. You've been on the ground floor, for production. So you see that all that goes into it. So it's not that you're just qualified to talk about what dress or what suit somebody's wearing. You understand that there's a 3-button suit compared to, I don't know anything about suits. But you know what I mean? For like a specific, but you get the subtle nuances and the different, aspects of storytelling. So by no means is it just, I'll get somebody that can just talk about costumes. It'd be impossible for you not to know anything about story to a deeper level. It literally would.
Do you mind if I just do a plug about something I'm doing?
No, you cannot plug in. No, yeah. No. Yeah. Go ahead.
I'm going to be okay. Well, it's been a year since Game of Thrones ended. And Justin, are you still doing anything Game of Thrones?
Well, next week, Gray Area is coming on to do George R. Martin, but
that's gonna be so fun.
Unless the books come out, I went on Shade of the Evening's channel a few weeks ago or 2 weeks ago to talk about Dunk and Egg. I'm always excited to talk about something as long as it's not another just unneeded, useless video about soaking in our own misery again.
Yeah,
Dan and
exactly.
Dave didn't do a good job. I got it. I'm done. I'm out.
Well, actually, so Vanessa, I don't think she's here. She's one of my viewers. She came to me and she said, I think it would be really fun to do, because I had done like a little video on characters that are in the show that maybe they, I thought, what if they would have dressed differently? Mm-hmm. Just like a what if video, right? So Vanessa came to me and she said, I'd really love to do like some of the prequel characters that aren't in the show.
Yeah.
So we started off with just like 2 videos, like a male and a female, and then it just ballooned up to like a 6-part series. So I'm going to be launching a 6-part series on prequel characters, and then what we're going to do is use like fandom art and so on to support it. So we'll be like, it's, won't be like, Michelle Clapton, the costume designer. It's going to be its own thing. And I'm doing it with Vanessa and Tatiana, who's my other fellow queen from Game of Queens. Well, so that's what I have coming up, and I'm very excited. So hopefully we'll have the first one out next week, and then every week after that.
That's very exciting, because that's a really Vanessa will be doing Stephen King. She'll be on for Stephen King for this.
No, it's not that Vanessa. It's a different Vanessa. It's Vanessa. She's one of my viewers. And
I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. And like Tatiana and Aaron, who also do videos with me, they're also former viewers. So like a lot of the times, like I've become really good friends with some of my viewers.
Absolutely. The fandom art is what made me think Vanessa Cole. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. No, actually, Vanessa has, speaking of her, though, she has an incredible painting that she did of Daenerys Targaryen. Did you see it?
Yeah.
And it got picked up by like some major news, magazine, like a big time news agency picked it up.
Her writing and her art is just it is so high level. Like, I mean, I can't praise it enough. So
which director are you doing with her?
Because she has her Stephen King podcast.
Oh, she's doing she's a Stephen King person too.
Yeah.
Oh, that's going to be good.
Yeah, the goal with the series is everybody picks their own. I did specifically approach. Now there's certain people, like she has a Stephen King podcast. It's always an honor to work with her as well. So it's like, you kind of want them, like Robert in Deep Geek. I kind of push. I'm like token. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But
of course.
But of course, everybody can come back for a second round. We'll keep these going. It's something I can do every Monday. And so you either got to be very, very knowledgeable, or at the very, very least, very, very interested in, enthusiastic about the work, because that's what it's all about. So definitely certain people can do because there's a lot of people. I'm gonna do Frank Herbert a little bit, but I only have like 1 or 2 people in mind, because it's not that I don't know other people that can talk intelligently about it, but I also want people that are known for talking about it, people that have enthusiasm. We can all do our research and do this, but it's like there's a lot of people to pick from, like we've talked about. So let's go ahead.
I just wanted to tell you, I shared some pictures the other day. This is just a little off topic, but I was just thinking about Frank Herbert. That I just watched. The what is it? The something of Riddick, the Chronicles of Riddick.
Yeah, Vin Diesel's in
and
that.
Wow, did it ever remind me of Dune?
I am
It
not. I am. See, I'm so.
it
I'm afraid
I
of
hadn't
Dune.
seen it. It's on Netflix now, The Chronicles of Riddick. And so it came up, and Jack and I are like, hey, we should just watch it. We did. It looks so good. It's got Dame Judi Dench in it, but we were talking about Westworld earlier that Tandy Newton's in it.
Mm-hmm.
She is gorgeous in it. Well, she's always gorgeous. Of course, Vin Diesel's in it. And
I
who's it?
rented
Oh,
it.
and Keith Urban is in it
Yep.
from Thor Ragnarok.
I rented that at a Mammoth Video that was at the shopping mall at the corner of my street out in Michigan, and I remember renting that with my older brother, and we watched those. The first one.
Yeah, well, because so Pitch Black is the first, and then the Chronicles of Riddick. So if you guys are Dune fans, you should check it out because it's got like a real kind of feel to it. A little like the costumes at any rate for me.
And I know very little about Dune, so and that's the reason I said when Frank Herbert, I'm gonna get somebody that knows.
Just like just kind of like medieval
desert,
armor.
But that desert area,
yes.
I know that's very the terrain.
But just the costumes are kind of like a little bit medieval, but just totally like science fiction, like just gone off like in a totally other fantasy science fiction crazy.
I know not to overstep with certain fandoms because everybody has their due that's owed to them, but those Dune boys, they'll come for you. It's a die-hard fan base.
Yeah, I'm actually really excited about the movie.
So I like Timothy Limpet. So
and did you do Denis Villeneuve already?
Denis Villeneuve, I'm gonna get it.
Villeneuve?
That's the week after next.
I have to tell you, one of the movies that he shot was in my old apartment building in Mississauga. He shot it because I was like, oh my God, I used to live there. So which one is that one? The one with the giant spider?
John from Cortex Vids is who is handling him because he is a big Dune fan, and he just graduated from I forget what university over there across the pond, but I am not gonna act like I'm an expert on him either, because I rewatched Dune. It's again, I think we had to download it. I watched it a couple of weeks ago. I said, Jack, we have to watch Dune because the new movie's coming out, and it's kind of great. Yeah,
got to get baked to watch it.
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah, it's definitely
trippy.
Yeah, I still need to finish The Expanse. So it's one of those.
Oh my God, Justin!
I know,
so good.
I know, I like it too. So like, it's one of those things that I owe. Like there's other ducks in the row first. So and again, like it's one of those properties. Like I wouldn't approach A Song of Ice and Fire if I wasn't like a diehard, right? You know what I mean? It's like in that same realm. Like it's like careful. Some things you can be kind of casual with and fun, but it seems like those are properties that people don't want you to be casual about. And hey, that is what it is. So yeah, I will wait for the right people for certain things like that. But everybody's always the right person as long as they're enthused and they got the energy and they
absolutely
want to talk about it. So
yeah,
we all can't be big shot costume designers. Come on now.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm not even like this is why like I'm kind of surprised regarding Thor that I loved it so much because normally I'm not really like a superhero kind of person. Mm-hmm. Like so that was like sort of to me like that really worked for me on many levels.
Yeah, I find that I have characterized myself in a different, I don't know if it's my fault or not, but people think that like I'm interested in a lot of things that I'm not. I don't think they realize like Westworld is such an exception to like my rule. Like, but now I'm going down different avenues because I've learned what I preach myself, what my palate is, that my mature-ish palate is, for things and found properties that I used to just steer clear of. I used to like literally not like anything like that wasn't being based off like something that's historically accurate. Like I'm serious. Like and now I know the hard truth of that. That usually it's not really the
so you like biopics originally?
I went through a phase like
they are really biopics can be really good.
I like
though.
Period. I'm a sucker. Like I've watched Rain and I think it's terrible, but I've watched it because it's like a crack addiction. It's like I'm like, oh, I like Victoria. I get I mean that's actually a decent show though. I
haven't seen it, but I heard it's pretty good. I've had my viewers ask me to do it.
Yeah, you should actually, because I could come in and help you on that one. That's like one of the you like the Borgias.
The Borgias.
Yes,
the Tudors.
Yeah, I like those were my go-tos. The first season of Game of Thrones because I hadn't read the book until after the second or third season. To be honest, I've said this before. I was more looking forward to the Borgias than
Yeah.
game, because I was
And
like,
see me, even
Yeah.
though like I kind of really focused on Lord of the Rings, or no, Lord of the Rings, even though I focused on Game of Thrones, my area really is science fiction. That's my absolute favorite.
and now I'm going more towards fantasy and science fiction. Like I have,
Yeah, and I'm
went through a
moving more to
mass-
fantasy. Yeah.
Like, I listen to a few great podcasts that are all about hard fantasy and soft fantasy writing, like, you know, just like you have hard and soft magic, you know, systems. And like now I went through quite a bit of you know, I guess I shouldn't say master class, but I've done my research. Like now I'm talking like 10 years ago. I wasn't into it like I was before. So there's still a lot of things that people can suggest to me. So feel free to do that. That's one of the things I love about my Patreons. Don't think I've watched everything. You know what I mean? Because a lot of times that's not the case. Like, it's really not. Like, The Expanse was another thing for me to reach out. That's why I'm not as into Star Wars as other people, because it wasn't like me growing up. That wasn't like a big part of it. But I can definitely appreciate it. So it is what it is. Not everybody fits into your little box. So
No. And it's good that's good that happens.
Yeah. So it's all about what they set out to do and how you think they achieved that. And then if you liked it or not, that's subjective. That's the fun part. So thank you so much, Heidi. Everybody check out Heidi.
God, thank you so much for having me, Justin.
Always a pleasure. Especially
always a pleasure with you as well.
I'm making
I want to have you on my show soon.
With the notes you sent me, I'm making that the demand for everybody else. Like, what the hell, man? Like, yeah, no,
you sent me pictures.
Yeah, pictures, all this. I'm like, well, yeah, that's not what Heidi did. Heidi gave me all this, or like, you invited me. I'm like, you're gonna be off the show next time, pal. Yeah. So no, yeah, you set the bar really high, as you always have. Thank you so much, Heidi. Thank you guys, my wonderful supporters. Thank you, Bruce, out there, always laying down some knowledge for me. Very, very insightful guy. And we'll be doing George R.R. Martin, you know, did a little story called A Song of Ice and Fire.
Guy.
Yeah, that fella. So, can't wait for it. So we'll see you soon. Subscribe. Check out the Patreon if you want to support create